good. Welcome, welcome. How we doing, peeps?
It's Friday.
Good.
Good.
It is. So, Will Riley, I've got Chad Westbrook, which we all know. We also have a new guest, Kerrick. So I'm excited to have this discussion today, and it'll be interesting as this thing unpacks. But the topic today is how will AI change the commercial roofing industry? We were talking a little bit offline about how we see it going. I think this will be a really interesting conversation. The reality is the construction industry isn't the first to adopt software. I think I saw a stat somewhere kind of a short time ago where agriculture was at the very bottom in terms of adopting technology, and roofing was just above it. But you're right. Chad, we were talking about this earlier. Paper timesheets, paper tickets, still a big portion of the industry. So where do you see the adoption of AI going?
There's so much to unpack with this because you have so many different people that are weighing in, and I don't want to be mean about it, right? But it's like all their personal opinions, and I guess that's kind of what you're getting from us. But it's all based upon the users, right? And like you said, agriculture is near the bottom, and unfortunately, whether we want to admit to it or not, roofing is too. We're still dealing with contractors that are using paper tickets, right, for service calls. We're still dealing with, I still have contractors I work with that use paper for time cards. And now we're trying to take like 12 steps ahead and be like, oh man, how is AI going to change this? Well, I truly feel it's going to be based upon how our industry adopts the technology, because we're very slow to adopt the technology. Some of it because of it's a multi-generation, right? Of this is how we've always done it and this is what works. And then we're having new generations come in that is changing it. And I think that's going to have a big impact on what our industry allows to be adopted. We have the ability, right, to accept something within our industry or decline it. Maybe not from the fact of like what's being sold to us, but what we choose to adopt into our business. And I think that's really where I feel our conversation is going to probably stem, is like, what do we see as far as what's coming in and what's actually helping us right now versus the outside sources that are sharing information of what could be. Does that make sense, Will?
I think it makes perfect sense too. And I love the point of kind of being in control of our own destiny, so to speak. And I think there's some influence that will happen naturally, as it does in other trades, right? How can we try to streamline things kind of like the HVAC industry has already done, or other service industries have already been taken in that direction, being able to streamline things, make things happen a little bit quicker. But I brought up the example earlier, buyers potentially altering the push of technology, the way the roofing industry operates today. What's the buying experience like today? And what's the buying experience going to be like in 10, 20 years from now? And we could talk about all the specifics as to how we see AI coming into the roofing space, but I'm not like sitting here fearful that it's going to come in quickly and shake everything up. I think, to your point, it's going to come in with layers.
So, and you make a really good point there, right? So every time that I have had some type of AI, right? So AI is artificial intelligence. It's just a way of learning some of the mundane or consistent things that we do, and it finds a way to be able to learn algorithms. I know I'm using big words, but it learns a process and then it makes it better. And Kerrick, you can go deeper than that when we jump on your side, but you mentioned the buyer side, right? And I guess there's two things I want to unpack. Number one, you're right, because our buyer is going to dictate what their expectations are from us as a contractor. And as soon as one contractor raises the floor, that becomes the new standard, especially when you're talking about larger corporations. Let's just use Amazon for an example, right? High technology company, but are they using any type of AI to be able to understand what's going on their roof systems? Chances are, I know a lot of the contractors that are putting those roofs on, and the answer is no. So even you talk about some of the big stuff that's happening, our industry hasn't evolved to it. But I think you are right that our clients could push that. The second part that I was going to say is that every time that AI has been introduced to me, it's been introduced to solve a problem that I have. So one of the most recent ones is we were researching customers to be able to see how many buildings they had or different things like that. And we're like, all right, let's try ChatGPT. And it was eye-opening to be able to see the information that it had instantly. And if you really think about it, it's just got a really, really quick way to be able to pull the exact information that I'm looking for, right? Google pulls a web page. That's great. I still got to go search for it. ChatGPT just takes that process and goes a little bit deeper and is now giving me summaries of exactly what I want. And I guess that's what I kind of see, and not kind of summary early on, but that's what I kind of see is that AI is going to continue to be able to solve problems based upon processes that we continuously have to perform. Kerrick, do you see it that way? And in your world, because I know you're working a lot on the aerial intelligence side, what do you see as far as what's being naturally adopted and maybe what's being pushed?
I think I agree with you on a lot of it, that the end client and end customer is going to drive a lot of that adoption. And you are right about how you're just pulling data. At the end of the day, really, that's how I see the information, and what we're doing at the end of the day is we're just collecting data and we're figuring out how to utilize it better. Specifically on the aerial intelligence side, we're running into more and more edge detection, which is basically just determining where lines are on a picture or on an image, whether that's from the depth, the color, the pixels. There's a few different ways and algorithms that you can run to decide on where you want to get to. But essentially getting further and further into that world of maybe being able to draw roof drawings faster, things like that. So that we've got digitizers that as you're drawing a line on a map, it continues to update that line and starts to get ahead of you for you, so you can start to draw out areas and things like that a little faster. And really in the aerial intelligence, that covers a lot of it. But as an entrepreneur, really when I started using it, when it came out a year ago, I did try to use it for everything like you're saying. And while it does help, I think mainly for me, it's been kind of having that second opinion, someone to bounce ideas off of, to let me go deeper on something. Or if I just have an idea on a whim and I just kind of want to go down a rabbit hole, it's able to help there and be my guide. But it's definitely not some end all be all solution to everything. It just helps you, can help you learn stuff faster and do stuff better. But it can also be a crutch on the other hand, and that you're spending more time learning how to key inputs versus actually, maybe getting the results you want or learning a process or information. And I'm curious what you guys kind of think about that.
Definitely love that. With the solutions and the implementation of AI to solve specific solutions, like that's exactly what's going to push the industry. For a client or a buyer, their solution is I just need more information. And that pushes the contractor to come up with new and innovative ways to get that information quicker and to have that information be available to their customer. But for me personally, I look to solve simple tasks. Just the other day, it was like, hey, I've got this spreadsheet and it's got a lot of information I'd like to see in a bunch of different ways. Well, ChatGPT AI helped me kind of reformat that, and it solved those types of tasks. I think as it continues to solve other contractors, I'd say challenges or shortcomings, it's going to be the mundane, right? Like the inputting data into a CRM or the putting notes down on paper, having some of those automated actions that tie together all the simple tasks. Remind me to do this. I put this quote out. I need a reminder in 7 days from now to follow up on that quote. Chad, with the contractors who are still doing timesheets today, the contractors that are still doing a lot of those paper processes, they're getting into new and innovative ways. Do you see AI kind of assisting with timekeeping, punching in and out?
Without a doubt, right? So, and this is where you're going to get like personal Chad coming in. If there's a rabbit hole we're going down, it's Kerrick and I going down that rabbit hole. Because when you think about like the capabilities, right? And that's where we're going, and not on a scary side, but on a really, really cool side. Timekeeping. It can recognize where you're at, right? So based upon GPS, and this is not, it's not saying it's out, right? But this is the possibilities of what could happen. It can recognize where you're at. It can recognize when you arrive. It can recognize when you leave, right? It can recognize when you go to Wendy's and get lunch. So it allows you to be able to, again, but that data has to be there. It allows you to be able to fix some of the mundane stuff where someone's manually going into the GPS and seeing, okay, they were here, they were at this point, they were at this point. I think all that stuff's going to play. All that stuff's going to come in, but again, it's there to solve a problem. And we can look at Tesla, we can look at all this different crazy stuff that's happening. But my blunt thing back to you guys, those industries are miles ahead of us. And I'm not saying it in any other way other than we're only going to be as good as we use it. So can we say like this really cool timekeeping thing is you just got to put it on your phone and it keeps everything? Well, it can be out tomorrow. And if our industry doesn't adopt it, it's not worth anything. It's not here, right? It might be in another industry. So it's really going to be how well our companies and how well our industry accepts some of the stuff that's coming in. And then how well does it solve the problems that our industry specifically has?
No question. I'll jump in a little bit here too, because I think furthermore, you're right. We're going to dictate the pace and the rate of adoption. But in the construction industry, at least from my observations, somebody has to think through, like you just mentioned that app. Let's say if it's out tomorrow, does everybody download it? Well, downloading it's one thing, but actually using it and having it fit your processes and still have visibility on the accounting side, still being able to pay people the right amount, still being able to, legally cover your basis.
Overtime.
If someone doesn't think through all of that, yeah, something like that, right? But if someone doesn't step back and think through how that app gets plugged into the business, how it's used, and how it's managed, then that's going to be a major shortcoming, in my opinion, if we can't figure that out.
Yeah. I mean, you know that you're in the technology side of the world, right? You can have the best solution inside the world. And if it doesn't have an API or doesn't integrate into the accounting system, we're not doing it. So again, the AI stuff could be beautiful, but if it doesn't tie into the business, if it doesn't tie into the process, right, it goes right back to those 4 pieces of a business: people, process, technology, and goals. And we're talking about technology, right? So it's here to be able to make things better, easier, and faster. And AI, I think, Kerrick, I think you said it, it always doesn't make stuff better, right? It always doesn't make it faster.
Yeah, I mean, because there's plenty of times where you'll be, as I especially get this one, when I first got into more of my marketing stuff, I was having it help me write articles and stuff like that. But the more I start to get into it and I want a specific idea, the harder time it has, and the more you get used to seeing the AI language, you start to pick it up everywhere, and it's really hard when it comes to writing and pictures and things like that to get to a place where it's very high level and professional, and it doesn't seem like somebody just went in there and slapped in a prompt, because you've got to do a lot of editing. You really need to pull it into a second software and then re-edit everything. And then a lot of times I still pull it into a third software which verifies how much AI language is in it. So that way I'm cutting that down even further, because then you start getting into SEO and all the other stuff, and is Google updating for all the AI, and going down these rabbit holes of how does it actually affect your business and your marketing and all that stuff. So it is crazy, but at the end of the day, you guys are right. I mean, I don't see it as any more than another tool in the toolbox, and that's, I think, the best way to approach most softwares and technology like this in general.
It's intimidating. We're talking about AI, ChatGPT right now. And for most contractors, they're like, well, what does that even mean? ChatGPT, what? Let's just boil that down really simply. ChatGPT is a site, or it's an app, and you can log on to that. It's free. You can do the paid version, but you can perform basic functions such as, hey, show me a case study format template, and it shoots out a basic case study template, and you can copy that, paste it, and actually do a case study, or write me a summary of this newsletter, and then give it some talking points, and it'll write that summary for you. You could do other things like take this spreadsheet and then reformat it for me, right? So that's what ChatGPT does at the surface. It goes much deeper. It could write programs. It could do a lot of other things. AI in general is, as we're talking, artificial intelligence, and that could be as simple as something that does a task for you programmatically, or it's something that can process and become smarter and smarter. Kerrick's example earlier was, I'm creating these marketing articles, and it doesn't sound like a human wrote it. So then you have to respond back to it and say, dumb this down, or make it more intelligent, or use this type of personality. It's really crazy what it can do. Are you guys using ChatGPT in other ways in your businesses or in your lives currently?
I'm going to answer this question. In our lives is what hits me. Okay. So I was told about this about a week ago and it worked beautifully. Okay. So I was told that if you input the, okay, adult here, if you input the alcohol that you have, if you don't have enough to be able to make a drink, okay, and you just input what you have, right? So it was like Malibu, it was tequila, it was pineapple, and whatever else it was, okay? It gave me like 7 different drinks that I could make with the ingredients that I had. So, but again, it's just looking at a massive amount of data and being able to say, okay, this, and this. And I had a beautiful, whatever it was, pineapple sunrise with an umbrella by the time I was done. But yeah, like I use it all the time. Almost, I mean, you look at almost a replacement for Google, depending on what I'm trying to get, because Google is now actually harder than Chat GPT. Google, I have to go look at websites. Chat GPT just gives me summaries.
Well, use caution with that because it can always be wrong and it can be intentionally wrong and it will give you a wrong answer. So you have to ask for references. But to give you one more interesting follow up with that, Chad, is you can take that a step further and it's got really good at zero shot object detection. And what that means is you could take a picture of all your bottles of alcohol and it can most likely still recognize the bottles of alcohol in the picture and then tell you what you can make from it. It comes down to a lot of common objects, but I've done it with bowling balls because I've tried to buy used bowling balls before off Facebook Marketplace, and they won't list them. They'll just have a picture of like 10 of them. And you have all this stuff like rotational differences, internal of the balls, and all this stuff, and what you need. And I could say, hey, here's my bag now with these 6 balls, what one would fit and where would it fit? And it would be like, it could replace your one ball because of this and based on this, replace this one based on this. So it can pull a lot of that information and data and research a little bit for you on the back end as well. But again, it's always check your references is the biggest thing with it.
That's fair. Perfectly fair.
But another zero shot thing to take that a step further, I actually seen they faked it originally somewhat with the Google release, but you can do it with like yarn, stuff like that. I was walking around with my wife around Michael's and she was looking at yarn and stuff, and I was just playing with it and just taking pictures of yarn and trying to create different stuffed animals you can make out of that color or that type based on what you ask for it. So you just kind of take a picture, feed it, and say, hey, I have these, or I want to create this, and you can actually make stuff from that.
So when we talk about the roofing world, right, and we're deep inside the AI side of like, hey, what can it do? Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's completely got the capabilities with the right algorithms, with the right integrations that I can go up on a TPO roof, take a picture of an open curb, and if it had enough information, it would be able to recognize that there was an open curb, technically, right?
Theoretically, yes. There's a lot there, a lot to unpack. Um, Mainly in the instance that there hasn't been as many people training these models on curbs and what they look like, whereas there's millions of images of detecting alcohol and basic objects and basic images versus, roof penetrations. And that's the hardest thing with, machine learning and AI is getting the industry knowledge built into one of the models, and that's our biggest struggle.
So you're saying I'm behind the curve with my whole ChatGPT alcohol hack. That basically what
No,
I'm saying.
you're ahead of the curve. We're behind the curve because we should be able to take a picture of a roof curb and it work.
I think that's fair. I think that, you're right, because there isn't a ton of that type of information flowing through these large language formatting, this AI to learn it over time. And that's room. That's room in the industry to do it the right way, right? So imagine we were to take all the best of the best repairs, the best of the best installations, and compare that to the proper installation methods by the manufacturers. There's a large opportunity to pull this off, right, so that it is there. And to your point, Kerrick, earlier about asking for references, that they could trust that the information is right. I'm going to make a couple of predictions in terms of AI in how I think it's going to impact the roofing industry. I think it's going to help with with admin tasks sooner than later, in office administrative tasks, like what we have to do to download our time cards and reformat it and send it off to payroll. Quick example. I think it's going to help by taking, paper files and digitizing them and being able to search your network for those files, for example. A lot of contractors have a ton of files, right? So how do we reference what we did 30, 40 years ago without digitizing that? That's another example. And then also, third, in the everyday use cases of communication. Today I could log into my Gmail and it's got AI in it. I'm like, well, what's this Gemini feature? And it's like, summarize this response I got, or create a follow-up, or create a next action. I think that we're going to start seeing more contractors use functions like that. What do you guys predict?
Go ahead, Chad.
So I'm just thinking through this, right? So I guess the first thing, and these are real-time problems that I'm dealing with, is that a technician could say, how do I properly flash an EPDM curve? And it probably can, and to Kerrick's point, there's a lot of validation to it, right? But it can probably spit that information out. Now, if the information's right, where it's pulling it from, there's a lot of variables in that, but those are the things that are just kind of going through my head of how can I make my team better? How can this help my company? Not necessarily be scared of what's happening. It's going to take my company over, but how can I utilize this to be able to solve the problems that I'm dealing with? Time card was a great example, right? If you hate time card, there's probably some great ways, especially I love what you said about reformatting time card, right? Being able to put the information in. You can input a spreadsheet and say, reformat this way. And it can do it for you. So those are the super cool things. My technicians inside the field, right? What type of I'm just going wide here, right? But what type of steam tape should I use on an EPDM roof? And all of a sudden it tells you what type of membrane. And those are the cool things that I think that can help our employees be more efficient in the field. But it's utilizing that AI side to get us the information quick. That can be really, really cool, right? How do I correctly find a leak on a concrete deck? And it brings up best practices on how to do it. Those are really, really cool things that I think can make an impact, and where I see our industry utilizing AI quickly, right? If adopted into the company, but being able to use different things like that to help solve problems.
Yeah, I feel like
Love
you
it.
guys. Yeah, I feel like you guys covered a lot of the basics and of where things kind of will be and the base use cases and things like that. I think to dive really deeper into traditional or true AI and where we're going, I think where Will is talking about, I think could be hugely beneficial. And it ties back into the aerial part and the idea of if you have old photos, if you have old jobs, if you had old information, and then you could essentially scan it all through a computer and through a scanner, and then it scans through it and it's added into your database. And you could do things like, hey, what does this building look like? And it would place where that building is, in space and things like that. So you're taking all that 30, 40 years of data, like Will said, and then like Chad's saying, you're on a roof and you're saying, hey, I've got an issue here. And it's pulling all the pictures, all the work orders, all the information, all the issues from that spot over time. That's where I think big picture where I'd love to see it get to is just all the data and information, and then it's able to actually segment and parse that data to figure out your information and what's going on in that building, specified to your company.
So, Kerrick, I have a question for you, and I think you're probably the best one inside this group. You can use ChatGPT to ultimately put walls on the information. So if you were to upload information into it, you don't have to always publicly share that back, right? Could I put maybe my SOP into a version of that to where my company could access it in an AI style?
So if you do anything through the GPTs and OpenAI, they are able to use your data. You can set up a GPT where it's private. They still have access on the back end, but it's not something where they're spamming it and selling it to the world. It's to retrain their models on basic things. So they're not trying to steal your data like that. I don't think so, anyways. But if you're really concerned about it, there's about 7 ways around that. But the main one just being the Open API. from OpenAI. So that one, if you use their API, it won't pull in, or you can selectively set to not pull in and retrain your data on. You're basically going to have to create what's called a vector database, and that's how AI models access information at a faster speed, because what they're actually doing is they're not looking for words and information. They treat it like geospatial information, so it knows based on a certain algorithm or a code where things are in space, and it will chunk all that data and information into different codes, and that's how it's accessing it so fast, because Google, like you're saying, is looking for words, pages, websites. AI is not. It's breaking down through a vector database, and it's going much faster.
It's that simple. It's that simple, guys. It's awesome. Yeah, you're awesome on the way you explain it. And I think that is the big risk. And that is the one thing I do want to talk about, is that there is a risk to using ChatGPT, right? There is a risk to putting your information into an open source platform, because just like we said, we got to teach these machines these algorithms, right? Or we got to teach them these processes. Is that if you put in private stuff, I'm not saying it's going to be shared specifically inside the next next thing summary it does, but it's in there. It's part of the learning side. It's just like any human brain, right? Anything we say and hear applies to kind of what our next step inside life might be, right? On what we hear on the radio or whatever it might be. So there is risk to that. And I don't know, Will or Kerrick, on what you guys know, but what do you guys, I guess, utilize inside the safety side of what you do or don't put in there?
I think that's a really fair point too, because for a lot of contractors, what they do is proprietary, right? Although there's a lot of contractors that don't believe that. They want to give back. They want the industry to just to be better. They want the floor to be raised, right? Which is what we're all about. So I think I don't think that there's going to be a few contractors, I'm sure, that will solve this problem. And they will do it for themselves, and they will put all of their data together. They will access it and get better because of it. I think that for the masses, it's up to solution providers to do that for contractors, and then provide the tools to the contractors that just make it so you just turn it on and just start doing the functions. And then it's up to us, right, to safeguard that. It's up to the software companies to safeguard that. I don't think any one entity is going to fix all of this or solve all of this. I think it's going to be a collective pool. And that's where I'm excited to see where this goes, is because if that collective pool pulls all of the best practices and does this training in a positive way, that it's going to be great for the roofing industry. That's how I see it.
Yeah, there's the glass half full. I'm in. All right, Kerrick.
No,
Kerrick, closing thoughts?
No, I was gonna say I agree with you. I kind of lost my train of thought there for a second, but I mean, for me, it's
You can disagree.
I guess, well, a lot of it's I don't have the fear, because I don't think, I guess I don't feel it's as dangerous. I don't feel it's as proprietary. Things like, I feel like what might be more dangerous would be like putting my social security number kind of stuff in there. But like, I don't know, like maybe more people are more scared of things, but like, maybe it's because I can estimate roofs and do all these other things across the board, that I don't really care what your numbers are most of the time, because my numbers are different, and I need to, maybe if we're competing on a job, that would be the only time, but I don't think they're going to be like, hey, what's so-and-so's number on this job, and it's going to pull it for me, you know what I mean? And then if ChatGPT is giving me information on like how much roofing stuff should cost, it should be all based off my stuff. So I do feel like a bit of it is fear mongering. I do understand the validity on like I feel bad for like, authors, creators of art, things like that, because we are, taking some jobs from those people, but it can also be used just like, Adobe Photoshop is now versus a painter. We don't have painters out there painting pictures of everybody. We have photographers and all these things. So it is just a natural evolution of the world we live in. But I just don't think the fear part, I don't think it's necessary. I would say yes, use some caution, but overall, have at it, have fun. It's not going to take over your house. It's not going to take over the world. It's not going to, turn on and be the Terminator or anything like that.
Hopefully.
It's just not that big of a deal, I don't think.
I love that. I love that side, right? Because I was thinking through inside my head. So here are my closing thoughts to it. It's like, all right, I'm never going to put my AR report, right? I'm not going to drop my AR report in there. But then again, if I did drop my AR report inside there, I could also ask, do any of these companies have bad payment reviews? Right. And now all of a sudden, now I'm pre-qualifying my customer to be able to see if these people have payment issues, these companies, right, have payment issues. And now I'm almost pre-qualifying my customers on if I want to work with them.
Mhm.
I'm just thinking, right? Like originally, no, I would never drop this in, but if I did, here's what I could get. But I think there's a lot of pros and cons to it. But again, all I'm doing is solving a problem through algorithms, right? Is there information out there that this can help? And I feel our industry is going to choose what we do or what we don't accept. And I'm going to tell you, I'm the one that's pushing us to be able to raise that floor. I'm the one to be able to push our industry to be better. Because just in the, I'll say the short 20 years that I've been here, it's night and day different, compared to what I came into to where we are now. And it's just going to continue to get better. And much like you guys said, I think this is just going to be another step in the right direction.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah, I love that and support it wholeheartedly. It's up to us to do our part, right? So this was a fun one. So guys, Kerrick, Chad, thank you for the time. Fireline Fridays. It's that 30 minutes to have some good, meaningful discussion on relevant topics so we can work on the business, not so much in the business. So thanks, y'all. We'll catch you next time.
Thank you.
Catch you later.